Toastmasters and guests. Good evening.
Good evening.
I know it was a hilarious evening. Now, all of you can see this picture. Just one of you can just tell me one word about this picture. DJ night.
Crowd.
Okay. Crowd. DJ night.
Happy.
Okay.
Auditorium.
All right.
Noise.
A few years ago, I was at a concert with my friends, and I was trying to squeeze in, trying to make it closer to the stage. And I found out that I actually bumped into a stranger, and I was there in his personal space bubble. And the juggle from that space, trying to make my way near the stage, was a real juggling act. And at that time, I realized I wish there was some kind of a personal space bubble detector. So these are the things which we experience in a very crowded place. I'm sorry I have to go back to this all every time. You stand here this side. Just here, okay? I have a friend, a very close friend, who comes very close to you and talks straight on your face. And you want to like tell her, which one? Okay. You want to tell her like, hey buddy, are you actually going to try to see yourself in my eyes and talk to me? They come this close, right? That's another experience. This is a PDF actually. So you have to be a okay, thank you. How many of you have experienced this kind of a scene where there's a crowd in the lift? Elevator, right? And sometimes you might stand waiting for others to come in, and you might have one person coming right there and standing and coming just right behind you. I mean in front of you, and trying to make way for others. And then there is no crowd, and this guy never even bothers to go in front, and you're trying to breathe but you can't breathe because that person is so very close to you, right? These are the experiences we have when we talk of a crowd, of people, or personal space. So next, what are we talking about here? We are talking about what is known as proxemics. Proxemics is a study of personal space and how human beings use it in their social life. Next one. So who actually coined this? This was coined by an anthropologist whose name is Edward T. Hall. It was in the 1960s. He was in the army and he was learning about people using spaces. And at that time, he spoke about what we know as the space study. Doctor, next. If you look at this picture, you will see that there are 4 types of personal spaces that we are going to talk about. First one is the intimate space, then is the personal space, social space, and finally is the public space. Now if you look at the intimate space, actually I had nice videos made, but I don't think it's working in the PDF, because you can see this child trying to run to his friend. Intimate space happens when you are at your closest relationships. Obviously your spouse, or your lover, or even your dog, okay, your grandparents. These are the people who are very close to you and they can cuddle you, they can hug you. You have a friend who comes running to you, meeting you after years, and you are okay with that kind of a space. So that is known as an intimate space. Now, of course, if you have somebody who is a stranger and who gets into that space, it becomes a little uncomfortable. And sometimes it can also get dangerous. We all agree with that, right? So this was the first kind of a space which is very intimate and it ranges from 0 to 16 inches. So you can imagine how close that is. The next space is personal space. Now this one again is a closed space, but not the one which will make you very suffocated. You could have a friend at a workplace who sits across and you have lunch together and you can talk, you can even smile, you can talk and you can hear that person well. But at the same time, you're not so close that you have to go and check their dental work, what is happening. So that kind of a distance, it's comfortable, but it's not suffocating. There are many instances at present we are sitting close to each other. This can be a personal space. The next one is social space. This is a little professional or formal kind of a space. Example could be yourself dealing with the person at the supermarket, at the counter, or a teacher who is standing at a distance and addressing her class. This is a very neutral and polite kind of a space where you can deal with people at a comfortable level. But it need not be something which has to be really very close. So here they're talking about this space. Dr. Then we speak about public space, 12 feet. Now here you're just walking in a park and you can see people passing by. You don't have to make eye contact with them. You don't have to talk to them. But they are there and you're giving them that space. You could have somebody making an announcement for your flight. That person is somewhere else, but there is communication at that kind of a space. There is a concert which is happening and the performer is here and you're watching the performance. That could be called as a public space. So Edward T. Hall spoke about these 4 spaces. Can anyone just recall what I said?
Intimate space, personal space,
social space, and public space. Great. So all of you know that, right? So this is about proxemics. Next. Please read this slide. And how many of you agree with this? People who drive.
Oh, I agree.
Yes? So have you ever noticed that anybody driving slower than you is an idiot and anyone driving faster than you is a maniac? This was said by this comedian George Carlin. Now, this can be even related to personal space. We could say someone who is very close is an intruder, someone who is too far away is disinterested. So we can relate this quote with personal space as well. Culture. We all agree that we come from different cultures, different backgrounds, and different countries. Now, in some places, standing very close to each other, talking, hugging, could be the norm and it could be very natural. Sometimes you might even hear the other person's thoughts and read their mind. You're so close to them. And in some countries, you get a little close, you might actually end up in some kind of a problem, or you might even end up in some kind of a karate match. This reminds me of one story which my one friend narrated. Some years ago, he had gone to Japan and he was on this work trip. He's this person who is very, very bubbly. The first time he meets you, he's going to give you a hug, he's going to give you a kiss, peck on your cheek, and he's an over-friendly person. And he went to Japan and he was about to meet his work colleague there, and she was a Japanese woman. The moment he met her, he ran and he was all out to embrace her and give her a hug, and she froze as if he had infused some kind of a gun, some kind of a atom bomb or something. And then he realized that he was in Japan and just a simple bow is enough for them. Then when he came back and narrated the story, we were joking and said, you should have had your work meeting someplace like Latin America, where people at the first meeting will hug you and give you as many kisses as possible. So that's about culture when we speak about proxemics. So you have to understand that culture plays a very important role. Workplace proxemics. How many of you have had that one boss who kind of looms at your work desk and tries to see what you are doing very close to you? Anybody has experienced that? I'm talking to people who are working, even bosses. Have you ever done that? Okay, so that's known as a power move. You want to get close, not too close, but what happens is the person who is working, his space is getting invaded, and he feels, or he or she feels like a cornered animal actually, because you are there that close. So that's a little dangerous. But you can also speak of proxemics in a place where your boss sits here and he makes you stand there and talks to you as if you are a nobody. So that distance also is a little harmful. So when we speak of proxemics, it should be used in the right manner at your workplace. Good leaders, they say, give you that kind of a space which is not too little and which is not too much, because that is a time where you can communicate, you feel heard, and you feel respected. So proxemics is something which can be used in your social life, it can be used in your personal life, it can be used everywhere and anywhere. Here, can someone read it for me, loud?
A house is just a place to keep your stuff while you go out and get more stuff, by George Carlin.
Again, I'm speaking of George Carlin. I'm kind of fascinated by his quotes. So he said that a house is a place where we keep our things. Again, we can relate your personal space to an invisible house where you could keep your comfort, you could keep your sense of security, you could keep your fears, and you can go out and meet people and give them just enough space that they don't intrude in your invisible home, that is your personal space. So we believe that personal space is very important, and come what may, you cannot intrude, you cannot go more than required in that particular place. Respect the bubble. Now, why do we say respect the bubble? At the start I said that if you do not understand space, you might ruin a good conversation, you might ruin a relationship, you might ruin your job prospects, you might even ruin your first date. So you have to respect the bubble, because that bubble, we might not have a bubble detector. But what we need is, we have to understand that as leaders, as people, that how much of space do we give? So next time when we are in a crowd, we have to understand, do I need to get more close or more far? Even in your personal relationships, I think it's important to understand how much of space is required for every individual. Secondly, what we have to understand is that no space is more or less. As we spoke of culture, as we spoke of workplace, the space has to be measured in terms of these things. And last, when I speak about it, I would like to share an incident where there was a time where somebody actually got carried away by the space, went and did something it was a personal experience, and it was not appreciated. That person lost the job. So it's very important to understand that we cannot get carried away. We have to understand these are personal spaces. So I hope everyone's personal space is respected. We give that much amount of space as much as we receive that much amount of space. And to sum up in everything, I would say that we need to, I think the time is, sorry. Okay, let me just finish here. It's not about where you stand, it's about how you stand in relation to others. That's the true meaning of proxemics. And from today onwards, when you go out of this room, if you have someone standing very close to you, or someone who is disinterested and standing far away and talking to you, you can just tell them, I know about proxemics, do you? And with that, you can relate, you can explain to people what it is about personal space. And I think I'm done with the speech. I know I'm running short, I'm not with the time, but I'll hand it over to Toastmasters.